Retirement. Some of us are in retirement. Some of us are waiting for retirement. There's this view that retirement's a time to take it easy. It's a time where schedules no longer, and the flexibility rather than the schedule is the way of life. There are jokes about people who fail at retirement. The idea of these jokes is that a person retired only to continue to be busy. This kind of person is just as active as they were before retirement. Now, this past Thursday was Ascension Day. It is a church holiday, and we're going to celebrate and talk about Ascension Day today. In the Christian calendar, Ascension Day marks the day Jesus gathered his disciples together and tells them that the work that they have to do as he ascends into heaven. He has also assured them that he's still going to be with them, and he's no longer going to be physically present. But then Jesus ascends into heaven. Now, Ascension Day, celebrated on the church calendar, it's always the same number of days after Easter, but we don't send out Ascension Day cards. We don't say Happy Ascension Day. Now, I'm not saying that Jesus' ascension into heaven is not a miracle and it's not to be celebrated. It is a miracle and we are celebrating. However, Easter, the resurrection, and Christmas, the incarnation, they play a bigger role in our faith life, in our salvation as followers of Jesus. So what is ascension all about? Before we consider what Jesus did on the day he ascended, the ancient world is something we need to talk about. Now, the ancient world was very vertically oriented. The place of the dead was under the ground. We're living on the place of the living, and heaven was above. So it only made sense that people ascended into heaven. Heaven is where God is. That's why we call stars and moons heavenly bodies. They got their start in the ancient world that way. Now, the ancient world also had some stories of ascension, where a person did not go to the world of the dead, where everyone else went, but they ascended into heaven. In the Jewish worldview, before Jesus, there were two people who ascended, who did not experience traditional death. Way back in Genesis, one of them was Enoch. And the story goes, one day, Enoch was no more, so Enoch ascended. He had kind of a not too spectacular ascension story. But then we have Elijah. Now, Elijah also ascended, and he had this big story about chariots, and he had a big Hollywood production number in his ascension. And that story is still part of the Jewish faith life. During Passover, people will set out an empty chair in honor of Elijah's possible return. And many people during Jesus' time thought, well, Jesus must have been Elijah coming back. Now, ascension was also an idea, a religious idea, that was shared by other people other than the Jews. The Romans had an idea of ascension as well. So in the Roman idea of ascension, someone could do something so glorious, so miraculous, so victorious here on earth that they would ascend to heaven. Now, this wasn't somebody who did something that was moral. This wasn't someone who had an exemplary moral life. No. The people that ascended in the Roman religion were generals who won a great battle, or emperors. So Caesar obviously ascended into heaven. And that becomes a big problem later on for the Christians because the Christians are saying Jesus is Lord, and the Romans are saying, no, no, it's Caesar because Caesar ascended into heaven. But what they fail to see that the ascension is not the incredible part of the Christian story. Because those people that ascended, including Elijah and Enoch, were people that ascended rather than face death. But Jesus is different. Because Jesus did not ascend until he conquered death. By the time Jesus is ascending to heaven, he has taken death on and became victorious. It is the resurrection that happened. Jesus went into the grave, could not be contained, rose from the dead, talked to his disciples, gave them their mission, and then ascended into heaven. Because death was no more. Now, Ascension Day. I started talking about this message, talking about retirement. The ancient view of ascension was some sort of retirement. There's a retirement from your earthly life. If you ascended into heaven, no longer need to worry about earth. Enoch and Elijah kind of retired into heaven. Now, Elijah got called out of retirement, but we don't hear that Enoch got called. Elijah had to show up on the mountain and talk to the disciples. Scared them a little, probably. But for followers of the Roman religion, ascension meant a pretty cushy retirement. The ascended were now with the gods, didn't have to worry about the concern of earth. But for Jesus, it's not the case. Jesus does not go into retirement. Jesus may have made his way into heaven, but is certainly not in retirement. He told his disciples that he's still going to be with them. And Jesus is still very much part of our humanity and humanity as a whole. The ascension of Jesus is very unique and very different from other ascension stories in the Bible. And the ideas of ascension in the Romans. Now, there were those things where messengers came to earth and did some work, gave some messages, and went back up to heaven. At least that was the idea, going back up to heaven. Okay. Now we're going to pause here for a little commercial break. This is a little coming attraction of a future sermon. Think about this question. What are the boundaries for the infinite God? Where does the infinite God live? Now, that's for a future sermon, not for this sermon. Got it up today. Back to our regularly scheduled sermon. God and messengers showed up with humans and then ascended back to heaven. But Jesus was different. This time, God and Jesus became human. Jesus' round trip from heaven to earth and back to heaven included not just some time at a Hilton or some Airbnb. No, Jesus became human and experienced all the pain and joy and everything that it is to be human, including all the suffering that humanity could throw. Jesus took. Enoch and Elijah ascended instead of dying. In Roman myths, the great generals and emperors ascended to the gods instead of dying. But Jesus destroyed death. Not for himself, but for us before he ascended. Jesus did not ascend to avoid death. Jesus ascended because he destroyed death. Jesus was the resurrection and is the resurrection. The new beginning, the new life. It is this resurrection that we are living and continue to live in forever. Forever. We live in the resurrection. Now, we discussed the ascension in the ancient world and how the ascension fit into the life of Jesus and his mission. let's take a look at what Luke has to say and what Acts has to say. They talk a little bit differently about the ascension. Jesus gathers his disciples, but we get a little bigger show in Acts. They seem to be different, a little bit different in how the ascension happens. Now, this is not a new issue in the Bible. We have different books in the Bible that describe things just a little differently. Okay? And we can attribute to that, well, maybe this author saw it this way, or this author saw it this way. But that doesn't work here. You see, we've got Luke, which is the end of the gospel attributed to Luke, and the ascension happens this way. Then we've got Acts, the Acts of the church, also attributed to guess who? Luke, written a little different. So, same person wrote both, but they're a little different. So, it's a little thing to wrestle with. The account in Acts seems to be a little full. So maybe, since Luke wrote that one second, maybe he found some more information, had some more time, but it's a little different. So we're going to concentrate just on the reading from Acts. So Jesus is with his disciples, and he's preparing. So the first thing he tells them, hey, guys, I want you to stay where you are. I want you to stay in Jerusalem. Now, he is not telling them to stay in Jerusalem because that's where they're going to stay. That they have been promoted to this Jerusalem-based management job of this new church. Although a few do stay in Jerusalem. But he's telling them to stay in Jerusalem because something's going to happen. Another preview. This won't happen until next week. But there's another preview of something big happening. And Jesus is telling his disciples, stay here in Jerusalem because something big is going to happen. So the disciples, maybe a little excited at this point. They're like, hey, Lord, is this the time that you're going to restore Israel? Now, what they were asking about, is this the time that you're going to restore and make Israel the nation that it used to be? The nation that was in charge. Because we Israelites, we haven't been in charge for a long time. And we really want to be in charge. Now, Jesus tells them something. So before I tell you what Jesus tells them, I'm going to tell you what Jesus does not tell them. Jesus does not tell them that some future prophet is going to write a book called Revelation, and it's going to have these secrets in that you guys are going to need to decode. Doesn't tell them that. He doesn't say that, 1900 years from now, approximately, there's going to be a bunch of people that are going to predict the end of the world. You go listen to them. Doesn't say that. And he doesn't say 1,800 years from now, there's going to be another nation in another continent that you guys don't even know about. And that's going to be the new Israel. He doesn't tell them that either. Basically, Jesus tells the disciples when they ask, tell us when the world is going to change and Israel's going to be back in charge. Tell us when the world's going to end and the new kingdom's going to be fully done. Jesus basically tells us, that's not your business. That's not your business. We don't know when that's going to happen. But Jesus does say, I do have some business for you. The restoration of the kingdom of Israel might not be your business, but I've got some business that you are going to do. Because you are going to spread the word. You are going to spread the love. You are going to spread what has been understood to Judea. Okay, that makes sense. That makes sense. Judea, that's where we are. That's our people. Good. Doesn't stop there. Oh, no. He says, you're going to go to Samaria. Oh, yeah. The disciples probably remember that Jesus did hang out with the Samaritans a little bit. A little distasteful, probably. But, okay. All right. We can go there. We can go there. They're at least in our inheritance tree. We're good. And he doesn't stop there. He's like, you're also going to go to the ends of the earth. The ends of the earth. Places where you don't even know where it is. That's where you're going to spread this message. That's where you're going to expand this love. Because this love is not staying here. It's expanding. It's going to take over the world. And you are going to be the ones to share. And I think that message comes to us today that we are to go both literally and figuratively and share this love, this amazing grace of Christ, this amazing message that will not be contained. It will not be contained. And we get to be part of it. We get to be part of sharing this amazing love with people we know, with people we don't know, with people we like, with people we don't like. We get to share it with them too. We get to share it with people that aren't like us at all. Because Jesus is expanding the message and is continuing to expand the message to the ends of the earth.